When you're looking for the next star player to carry your fantasy baseball team, sometimes the answer is a guy who hasn't even played in the majors. If you drafted Corbin Carroll, Gunnar Henderson, or picked up Ellie De La Cruz during last season, you know what I'm talking about. So which prospects are going to be the top players that you want to target in 2024 fantasy baseball? Just like I did for pitchers, I'm going to give you my top 12 hitting prospects who should help in redraft leagues for the 2024 season. At number 1, it's going to be a player that has shot up the rankings and is the number 1 prospect on a lot of lists. That's Wyatt Langford for the Rangers. He's got a sweet stroke, that power speed combo. He's going to fall into a great situation in that lineup. I mean, this is a guy who just continues to rake at every stop hit. 333 in A ball, and then 405 at Double A, over 42 at bats, and then 368 in his 19 at bats at the Triple A level. All told, 161 at bats. He managed 10 home runs, so prorate that, you see he's not too far off from being a major power threat. There's a lot to be excited about here. He could be an instant impact maker, kind of like Corbin Carroll. Not that kind of speed exactly, but still, this is a guy that has everything to offer. There's really no reason to move him any lower. Now at number 2, a player that was at one point on MLB Pipeline's rankings list, the number 1 prospect early last year. Well, I'm going to keep him all the way down at number 2, but Jackson Chourio for the Milwaukee Brewers. This is a guy who's not even 20 years old yet. He managed 22 home runs, 43 stolen bases in 510 at-bats at the Double A level. And then at the very end of the year, got a taste of Triple A. You know, sometimes a lot of times they'll get their cup of coffee there at Triple A because of the timing of the way these seasons end. The raw talent is easily there for this Venezuelan outfielder. But the thing that's most encouraging is that he's got plate discipline already. He lowered his strikeout rate to 18.4% this season. Age is just a number these days in Major League Baseball. Could easily see Churro being an everyday outfielder from the jump next year. If you're a fan of Major League Baseball, well, you should know that Underdog is the place to go for your pick'ems. You can go higher or lower on several key players for every team throughout the playoffs. Higher, lower on strikeouts, hits, runs, RBIs, you name it, they've got it. Make sure that you use promo code ENDGAME for your 100% deposit match. Next up, let's talk about another legacy player. We've had a lot of these lately, and it's turned out pretty well for some of these guys like Vlad Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette. Let's go to the Orioles and talk about Jackson Holliday, the son of Matt. He could easily wind up being the best overall of this prospect list in terms of real life. In fantasy, he doesn't have quite the upside of those first 2 players. He's got a very solid contact first approach, but also some power that he's going to continue to develop. He did hit 12 home runs in 477 at-bats across 4 different levels of minor league ball. The ceiling for power and for speed isn't, the greatest, I think, of all these players. You throw defense into the mix, this is a guy who could clearly be an all-star for years to come. I'm thinking maybe another Dansby Swanson, at least at his best, with more potential. You have to just say at this point, the fact that he's in the Orioles organization has got to make you feel good. I mean, look at that entire roster, although they fell short in the postseason, still, the way they have developed all these hitters, Holliday easily could just step in and be a contributor right away. Now, number 4, here's a guy who, for some people might have at the top of their list, Dylan Cruz, who's in the Washington Nationals organization. No denying the track record at LSU, the number 2 overall pick, only because his teammate Paul Skeens, being a power pitching prospect, went ahead of him, but Cruz easily could have been the top pick. Honestly, maybe the best hitter in college baseball ever. No surprise, he was fast-tracked to the Double A level. Now, he didn't really hit that well there. See, the batting average, despite being a guy who reached base every single time he played in college, it didn't happen for him, but obviously getting a little bit of experience, it might take some time. He won't be there long, and it won't be very long until he's in the Washington Nationals everyday lineup. Unlike I mentioned with Holliday, I would say Cruz being in Washington, to me, it doesn't make me feel as comfortable. They haven't had as much success developing their hitting prospects, but Cruz is a guy just so much natural feel for hitting, and of course the power is there. Even though Washington's not a great place for a power hitter, I think Cruz will be just fine. Tampa Bay, not the best place for a power hitter either, but it really doesn't matter with Junior Caminero, how hard he hits the ball. I think the Rays are going to have another gem. He did get the call late in the season to the big club despite his youth, and in 34 at-bats, he did manage a homer and 7 RBIs. Only hit 234, but this guy hit for average at every single stop in the minors, and he should be an on-base machine with the power to go 20, 25 home runs, even as a rookie. He should be able to step in there at third base, because of that, because of his hard line drive approach with the power to lift the ball. There have been some comps to right-handed Rafael Devers. If he can come close to approaching that level of offensive prowess, yeah, he's going to be a star. Number 6, I'm going to go with a player I think is going to be slept on big time. That's Kyle Manzardo. This is a player who was in Tampa Bay, but then got traded to Cleveland for Aaron Savale. That trade didn't wind up helping Tampa in terms of their postseason run. I think they're going to regret this because Manzardo is going to be a legit stud for years. All he did was hit at the minor league level. Didn't do too well in his brief time called up in Tampa at the major league level, but again, it's still too early to make anything out of that. He legitimately has a 70 grade hit tool and the power to be a 20 plus home run hitter. He did go deep 11 times in 265 at bats, and that's at AAA. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a threat for the home run title or anything like that. I don't think we'll ever see, 40 homers or anything like this. But if you can consistently get a high average with that power as well, Cleveland is a good spot for him. I like Manzardo a lot, and I think he's going to contribute early next season. In fact, I think Manzardo has the talent to be a lot like a guy they also have in the lineup, and that's Josh Naylor. Now at number 7, Detroit Tigers might have another good one in the infield with Colt Keith. The second half of last year, we finally saw Spencer Torkelson come through, mainly with the power, not so much the batting average. I think that's what you're going to get, but hey, you'll take that kind of upside. Keith, even though he's going to slot in at either second or third base eventually, we shall see. He's a guy who's going to be more power over hit and glove. But unlike Torkelson, I gotta like what you see so far as he's not striking out a lot at the minor league level, of course, I'm talking about. In AAA, 301 plate appearances, only a 19% K rate. Plenty of room for him in this Tigers infield to step in immediately, so could see him right off the bat after spring training ends. And then let's go back to Baltimore because they're not done with having these young stud prospects just come in and contribute. We could see Kobe Mayo in the early part of next season. As another third base prospect here, that's encouraging that position. Where's he going to slot in here? Well, we could see him at his natural position of third base, and maybe Westburg goes to second. It doesn't really matter. They'll find a place for him. Right now, Mayo is a guy who, gets a lot of interest because of his unique swing, reminds them of Hunter Pence. It doesn't matter. If it works, it works. He raked at the AA level and did slow down a little bit at AAA, but still, he did have a high walk rate. He showed his power. He joins that O's lineup. You've got to be interested. And then another Nats prospect. Talk about just raw ability and especially raw power. Got to look at 6'6", 240 James Wood. This is one of the key pieces to that Juan Soto trade when he went to Washington over from San Diego. Wood is a guy who legitimately has a ceiling of 80 grade raw power. The frame obviously is there. This guy can hit the ball hard. And even despite that, he also has above average speed. Don't anticipate him being a big base stealer, but still, this is not a guy who's just purely a slugger. And he's not even a corner infield option right now. He's actually a center fielder. Whether he ultimately winds up in the outfield or the infield or wherever, it doesn't really matter. He can hit the ball hard. He can contribute across multiple categories. He's not a guy who's completely sacrificing average either. Like I said, I'd like to be a little higher on him if he wasn't in the Nats organization. But look, if nothing else, we've seen they're not afraid to promote their prospects. There's going to be space for him on the roster. So if he's ready, then he'll get the call. When that happens, I think we might have to wait a little bit. He did sport a 31% strikeout rate. That's to be expected with guys who have his kind of long swing and that kind of power. Also, a little concerned he's had some wrist issues. Never good for a hitter, but especially a guy who does rely on his power. So I'm going to take a little more patient approach to Wood. We know his ceiling is massive, but this could be one that's more of a mid-season call. And then Pete Crow Armstrong did get the call late in the season for the Cubs. It didn't end well. Over his first 14 major league at-bats, not a single hit. No need to panic here. Obviously, the player super young, just getting his first taste of the bigs. This is a player who is well-rounded. He's going to be a guy with a patient approach. He can hit for average. He does have some pop. He did go for 20 home runs and hit 280 between AA and AAA last year. He's also got some speed, but above all, he should stay in the lineup long-term because he's an excellent defender. So while he hasn't yet made Mets fans kick themselves even more than they already do for this deal, when they sent him away, it's still something long term. It should be pretty good for the Cubs, and Crow Armstrong should be kind of a fantasy staple for a decade or longer. And then in Arizona, Jordan Lawler, the new shortstop there, he did get the call, and he also kind of struggled, to be honest. Hit 129 in just 34 plate appearances, no home runs, 1 steal. Lawler has always been kind of a more glove forward prospect. Of course, he has good speed and decent pop. He's somebody that eventually will develop into probably a 2020 threat and hit for decent, if not amazing, average. Now we know that Arizona is a great place for him to be. This team has transitioned into a really good offense, and so Lawler should be a guy who, hopefully hits at the top of the lineup. My concern next year is that he starts out more in like the 8th spot, and so that will hurt his counting stats a bit. But again, the upside here is clear. If he's ready, and this experience, especially making the postseason roster, is invaluable to him. So he should be good to go from day one. And at number 12, I'm going to end with another very young shortstop who does carry some risk, as a lot of these guys do, but also has a ton of upside. That's Marcelo Mayor for the Boston Red Sox. Just 20 years old, but look, Boston, they need a solution. They need some youth in here. He should be ready to contribute. Some people thought he might get a call last year. He didn't, but that's probably because he did struggle at Double-A a bit. Showed some power, but the average just wasn't that good. There's still enough talent in this lineup that Mayor could slot right in and be a contributor for fantasy teams once he holds down that regular everyday job. If you missed my breakdown of my top 12 pitching prospects for redraft next year, well, you can check it out right here.